A few days ago, while I was still in Atlanta, I was having a conversation with a friend, an old friend, somebody that I know, I've known for years. And we were talking about, well, the mess that 2024 the 2024 election specifically, certainly would be. And he asked me about uh, my my notion of not voting as an act of which is something I've talked about here before, as an act of not opting in to the system, not opting into the powers that be, not opting into the principalities, powers, thrones, and dominions, in the sense that if you give assent, and this is something I've talked about before in prior videos. I think I've gone over this perspective of mine, that if you give assent to the system, let's just call it the system, for lack of a better word. If you give any kind of assent to the system, if you participate in the system's rituals, of which voting is certainly one, then you are essentially saying, or your act of voting is essentially lending credibility to them, or lending credence to their legitimacy, undeserved credence to their legitimacy. I don't believe that the thugs and criminals and liars and child molesters and murderers row of demonic entities that currently hold sway, uh, and over probably much of the world, but definitely over the Western world and definitely over the United States government. I don't believe that they have a legitimate right to rule over me or you or anybody else. And I believe that when you when you participate, even with the best of intentions, all right, you might say to yourself, I know it's all crooked, I know it's all corrupt, I know, I'm coming into this with eyes wide open. I know about the Franklin scandal, I know about Pizzagate, I know about um, Jeffrey Epstein and everything else. I'm just referencing a few things here that indicate the true identity of those who rule us, or who claim to rule us, who those who illegitimately claim the right to rule the rest of us. So the question is, why vote, or the question of the notion of voting as somehow giving assent to them came up. And I thought of a metaphor that I hadn't thought of before, and I think I'll share it. I thought, well, this might be something to share with my legions of loyal listeners. So I shall. And the metaphor is this. So we all know that there are numerous situations of family life, instances of abuse. Okay, it could be physical abuse, it could be sexual abuse, but anyway, you have instances of abuse that's being committed by one of the two parents. Sometimes it's by the father, sometimes it's by the mother. Uh, but what I'm specifically referring to are instances of abuse in which only one of the two parents are directly abusing, directly involved in the abuse, and the other one isn't. Okay, so I'm not talking about situations in which both parents are abusive. But I'm talking about situations in which one of the parents is abusive and the other parent knows about the abuse, because how could he or she not know? And unless this other parent is just not in their child's life at all and has no idea what's going on with their child. If we're talking about I'm living in the same household, which I am. Again, I should make that clear. I'm talking about situations where they're living in the same household, not where they're separated and one is living in one place and the other's living in another place. You know, but an intact family living in the same household, and there's child abuse going on, and it's happening by one of the two parents, and the other parent knows that it's happening, hates that it's happening, um, and wishes it would stop happening, but at the same time, just uh, doesn't want to face up to what he or she knows. And so this other parent, the non-abusing parent, ignores it or wills it away, wishes it away, pretends that it's not happening, and tries to go about his or her daily business, and you know, just hopes that eventually it will stop on its own. Um, but basically doesn't want to hear about it, doesn't want to think about it, doesn't want to deal with it. Okay, and this is the case with many. Um, as I understand it, this is the case with many abusive households. Now, I think we can all agree that the in a situation like this, the non-abusing parent is culpable in the abuse. I don't think anyone would argue otherwise, um, because the other parent knows what's going on and is doing nothing to stop it. Um, so so there's the metaphor. Now, how does this metaphor connect to one's relationship with the system, specifically vis-a-vis the act of voting as a specific um, civic activity, let's say, what some people look at as a civic duty. Um, so here's how I think it works, metaphorically speaking. Um, I think what and I've said before that what a person must do, a person who is awake and aware of the things that are actually happening, and um, and knows the great evils that are being perpetrated by those in power, um, the systemic evils that are being perpetrated. Uh, whether they be um, the things that the military-industrial complex does, or the kind of things that I referred to earlier. Casapia, in the Casapia situation, in where is that, Portugal, the Dutroux situation in Belgium, um, the Franklin scandal, the Presidio scandal, lots of other things that I could list off, but that I think that display ample evidence of abuse and sexual exploitation of children happening on high levels. And you can look up any of these things on your own and find out on your own what you think, and come up with your own conclusions. But to me, it's no there's no mystery about what's really actually going on. Okay, but that's just one prong of it all. I mean, it's just my conviction is um, the group that rules us is evil to the core, and the ones who rule us aren't the ones we elect, of course. But of course, so then the question becomes: how does this relate to electing? How does this relate to voting? And again, I've said before that each of us, has because they do these kinds of things. Uh, they have us participate in things, and they have us. I've talked before the example I gave of 9/11, of how it's not an airtight story at all. How you just look into it a little bit and you see that something's very wrong with the official story, and that could be said about the official story of so many other things, right? Um, and the reason why they don't make it airtight, even though they could, is because uh, the fact that it's not airtight, the fact that it's in fact risible, the fact that it's so riddled with impossibilities, makes it so that if you go along with it, if you have a brain, and it's one thing if you're mentally retarded or something, if or just otherwise, uh, otherwise you have no real reason to. I mean, you can be exempt from uh, complicity, or not complicity, but what's the word I was thinking of? Culpability was the word I was thinking of. So anyway, given that all that stuff, okay, so they do this stuff, and and they don't totally cover it up. They make it clear what really happened, because it's a way that, in their minds, it's a way of it's like a karmic um what's the word? I guess the best way to put it is like a karmic green light. There, the people know, everybody knows, and they have to let people know. They have to. It's like part of how things work. Satan has to let you know that he's Satan. If Satan could completely fool you into thinking that he's God, then you wouldn't be culpable in any way. You would be correct, to follow him as if he were God, if he were really truly, again, if it was really truly airtight. But it's not, and it can't be, and that's how evil works, or seems to work in this world. Okay, so anyway, went into a bit more of a dissertation there than I meant to, but here's why I think voting is akin to the situation that I talked about earlier. Um, I think when you vote, what you're doing is metaphorically similar to what the non-abusing parent in an abusive household does when he or she does nothing to try to stop the abuse, um, does nothing to protect his or her own children, but just hopes that things will get better. Um, this is what voting. This is the. I hate the word cope. I hate it with a passion. But you could say that it's a cope. You could say that it's a cope that's been set up by the powers that be, as like a safety valve, or But it's not just a safety valve. It's not like if it were only a safety valve, then it would just be, oh, well, you can vote. And if you've got the freedom to vote. And as long as you can vote, then you're really living in a free society where the citizens are the ones who are truly in control, right? That's the safety. That's how it works as a safety valve. If there was no voting, then people would say, hey, wait a minute, you're just doing all this stuff, and we don't have any. We're not consulted at all, and then they come back and say, oh yeah, well, you can vote. You can always vote. It's in your hands, citizens. Your leaders are just really your public servants. They serve you. They're not actually ruling on behalf of those who control them through blackmail and other dark means. No, they're actually public servants, and they're at your command, and you can control things. You can control the way that the course that is taken by our country through your vote. But it's not just that they claim it as a safety valve. They also, for them, it's like a way of saying, and again, this is esoterically, I think, how it functions. It's saying, you are against the way things are. Well, just go vote. Vote. If you vote, then then what you think you're doing is trying to change the way things are. But what you're really doing is opting in to the very system that is perpetuating all kinds of evil. And what you're doing when you vote, even if you think you're voting, again, even if you go into it with eyes wide open, what you're actually doing is saying, you all have my permission. You get my permission. I give you my permission. I sign over my sovereignty to you by participating in your little ritual, not little, in your big, enormous ritual of voting. And that's what's, again, I believe it's akin to just ignoring, or it has the same effect. It leaves the same kind of stain on your soul, or a similar kind of stain on your soul that the non-abusing parent in an abusive household, the stain that's left on that person's soul, because that person again declines to take charge and do something that isn't dependent on just letting things go, and it's I know it's like it's a strange metaphor, because you think, well, voting is an act. You're taking an act. You're taking your own future into your hands when you vote. So it's an empowering act, right? That's how they lead you to believe. That's what they lead you to think that it is. But it's really an act of opting in to abuse on a massive scale. And so it's a way of getting you to signal that you are, or signal or signify that you are good with it, good with things being the way they are, or at least you're not going to challenge it. You're not going to resist it. You're going to play along, just like the non-abusing parent plays along, because he or she is just too whatever, too scared, too exhausted, too intimidated to do what's right on behalf of his or her children. There you have it. Am I wrong? Where am I wrong? If I'm wrong, let me know what you think. And thank you for watching.